We are doing rain gardens and bioswales. You know, how can you make a difference in your 50 feet shoreline? So we're trying to take it from both angles.
Great, thank you, Ted. Thank you, Pat. So as Ben pulls up the slides, now I'm pleased to introduce Darrell Smith, who is the Watershed Program Manager for the City of Oconomowoc's Watershed Protection Program. Darrell also helps to coordinate the Farmers for Lake County producer-led group. So I'm excited for us to learn more about Oconomowoc's adaptive management program. So turn it over to you.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm the proverbial speaker that stands in the way of your next break, so I will try to be streamlined in my talk. Hopefully I can figure out this advancement procedure. So I work with the City of Oconomowoc. The Watershed Protection Program is a city-based program to address water quality and specifically phosphorus as a nutrient concern. It's based in the wastewater treatment facility because it's actually tied to our wastewater treatment plant permit. In Wisconsin, we have an alternative way to for a city to reach compliance with TMDL, which you heard about today. Limits that have been set for the Rock River Basin. We are your closest large river system to the north and west, and we're one of the sub-watersheds of the Rock River Basin. And what that looks like is we are an 80,000 acre watershed. Where the red star is where the water treatment plant is for the City of Oconomowoc. You can see it's in the lower section of the basin that flows from up northeast to southwest, the confluence where it hits the Rock River. In 2015, an adaptive management plan was approved by the Wisconsin DNR to meet water quality limits at that point of confluence by addressing water quality on a watershed-wide scale. So this was a pretty new program at that time. We were one of the first to be approved, and it allows and incentivizes the city to invest outside of city limits to address non-point sources, which includes farm runoff and other concerns, and to ultimately have our feet held to the fire of water quality in a 15-year time frame at that point of compliance at the confluence. Now you'll notice where we're located. The alternative to reaching this water quality was for the treatment plant to invest significantly in plant upgrades. And that is still happening. But when you look at it on a cost effectiveness, the calculations that were run, it seemed like we would be able to do better cost per pound of phosphorus reduced by investing not just at the treatment plant, but watershed-wide. And also because the treatment plant is just south of the center of town and the nucleus of population. If we did a bunch of work just at the plant, then the folks living around the lakes upstream would see no benefit water quality wise. And so for that reason, the city jumped at this and it was approved at the state. What that looks like from a compliance standpoint, you can see the circle is where it meets the Rock River. We have our final testing point there at Northside Drive. In 2015, our median concentration of phosphorus was 0.091 milligrams per liter, and the criteria for compliance within the Rock River TMDL is 0.075 milligrams per liter. Our present condition, and since I might run out of time, I'm just going to cut to the chase. Present condition, our median number is 0.078, and so I'm here to say we're making progress. We haven't quite reached the level we would like to get to, but we're making progress. The other thing is that the DNR has unveiled some more expanded understandings of what clearly meeting that criteria looks like. It's not just having a single number of a median value of 0.075. It's actually a median value, but also taking in consideration levels of confidence based on variability and the ranges that you see. And that we need to actually probably hit a median target that's well below 0.075 in order for that degree of variability to be accounted for. That's kind of late breaking news for us, and it has us wondering exactly how we're going to get there, but we are making progress. There's a series of incremental steps of load reductions. These are columns showing the 5,000 pounds by October of 2025, 5,000 pounds of annual load reduction we need to achieve from each of these 5 different areas. The first line is the wastewater treatment plant, effluent reduction, so still work being done there. Land management measures would be where a lot of my focus goes in terms of working with farmers. Also lake improvements, stream bank stabilization, and then the city of Oconomowoc MS4 stormwater projects. Each of those are at play to ultimately get by year 15 in the program 9,750 pounds of annual reduction. These numbers are targets that need to be hit at benchmarks based on modeled results. However, when we get to year 15, it's not just what the model says, the water has to show that improvement. And so that's where our focus is both, doing projects that have modeled estimated benefits, reaching water quality targets. So that's the overall framework, and the rest is just to give some examples of work that we're doing. We don't act alone. We work very actively with landowners who have a variety of different objectives, and they're also key project partners, and I want to bring some of those mentions as well into this talk. So this is one of our projects, one of the very first ones, which was a combination of creating a sort of berm and sort of holding back the water that was draining like a bowl into the center of this farm field, a wetland system that ultimately then outputted right to the Oconomowoc River. This landowner was renting the land to a farmer, wasn't fully happy with certain aspects of the agricultural work happening there, and was very motivated philosophically to convert it to prairie. This is about 100 acres that got converted to prairie. We felt like it was high value, and what we ended up doing is both helping with the installation costs and also paying a rent to that farmer or the landowner for a 10-year agreement for the land taken out of production, the loss of income that came from renting to a farmer. It was actually a 10-year agreement. We do 5 to 10 years in this. This is one of our more expensive programs because we're renting so much acreage. So we have moved somewhat away from this as a model and focusing more on buffers. This is a system, a stream, unnamed stream in the southern section of the watershed, and a very early stage of a planted buffer. You can see the concentrated flow running off of that field, not adequately yet protected by the buffer. But we also have a system for harvestable buffers. So in that case, a farmer or landowner can receive rent, but also some revenue from production off of that. This is that same buffer system a couple years later, and it's really grown in well. And I was actually there and was able to witness very crystal clear water, even in a spring melt situation. So really happy about that. I feel like that's a success. In addition to farm-based projects, we're working with partners, in this case, Tall Pines Conservancy, who really jumped on board following work by Southeast Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission study on Mason Creek, which is a significant contributor of phosphorus to North Lake, one of the upper lakes in that chain in the central part of the watershed, you may remember from that earlier slide. So that study identified areas where there were legacy issues of sediment, also ongoing issues of concern of nutrient runoff from adjacent land. And so with a number of partners helping with design, Tall Pines purchased a stretch of land. Then a design was done for a re-meander to take it out of the channelized and sized straight line ditch system that it was on this historical creek, and return it closer to its previous sort of naturalized flow pattern. And we did a restoration project that just completed in November, in which we were providing meanders, places for sediment to settle out, provide protection on outside edges of the bends, and to take a channelized stream and integrate it with more terrace slopes into the existing floodplain, which makes it a lot easier for vegetation to hold on and filter water going forward. However, it's not just changing that, it's also providing additional buffering on the side. So earlier, there was a very active farm field in a very wet area. There was a couple of fertilizer piles that were left after planting. And over time, a combination of Mother Nature, as well as our own active seeding of prairie, we're adding some additional prairie strips in those outside areas. And so there will still be farming going on, but just with additional buffering adjacent to the stream. Farmers for Lake Country is a producer-led group that I'm actively involved in, one of the co-facilitators. Tall Pines Conservancy takes the lead role in this as well. And DATCAP is a significant, Department of Ag is a significant contributor of funding. And so there are a number of producer-led groups. I know there's some active ones here, and Jim spoke really well for the work being done, and he's a great resource for a number of producer-led groups in terms of research being done out there. We've asked him to speak at our group before and probably have him back because he's got really great on-the-ground experience and speaks as a producer. Can't say enough about the benefits of having actual farm-level research and sharing of knowledge, and that's what happens in our producer-led group, as well as cost share dollars. So Jim mentioned that, you know, there are some upfront costs before you maybe start seeing benefits in cover crops. Some types of cropping systems, some years are riskier in terms of the return on investment, so we're able to provide some cost share dollars. We did a very active aerial seeding program, both by helicopter and then most recently this fall by drone, to fly covers onto cropland, particularly soybean ground before leaf drop, and that allows us to get covers on a little bit earlier in the fall, more time for growth, and then come next spring there is better vegetative cover during spring melt, and particularly May, June is vulnerable times for us. Here's a graph showing the amount of cover crop work being done in our watershed that we know of. There's probably work that's happening we don't know of, but you can see that the formation of Farmers for Lake Country was critical to both aerial and drilled applications of cover crops. And Jim also mentioned planting green. I think it's one of the most exciting things out there. Personally, I love the system. If you have a farmer who's willing to make this what the ground looks like at the time of planting, as opposed to the beautiful black dirt, clean slate, which has a wonderful appeal to us. However, ecologically speaking, we've got in this system plant cover, capturing solar energy, feeding root systems, feeding soil biology, providing cover during the early season before the corn. This is at the time of planting. So then 6 weeks later, the corn's starting to come up. But if you wait on termination till the time of planting or shortly thereafter, you've got all that vegetative cover providing a mat as it lays down and protects the soil during the early season of growth. And then eventually the canopy grows out, closes across that and bridges that gap. And at that point, that plant is decomposing and returning nutrients to the soil that it's taken up into its own cells. So a really great system. This is not being done by everybody. There's some risks involved. You know, you want to make sure you're a good seed to soil contact at the time of planting. So it's not for the faint of heart. However, we've got folks who are doing this and able to share that with others, saying, this is working for me. I had to adjust my nutrient program a certain way. You've got residue breaking down that can capture nutrients needed for the newly seeded crop. So again, a lot of things to balance, but I think this is the wave of the future to provide more annual cover. In a traditional conventional corn crop, you literally have about six months of bare soil, you know, and that's what we're trying to. And in soybeans, when they're harvested, there's not as much residue, so you got bare soil at that point too. It's a complex system, but farmers also need help to get there. Confidence, knowledge, funding, so they can start to see those return on investment over a multi-year period. That's very briefly nuts and bolts. We called the talk of a successful watershed program. Well, it may be too early to really claim success, but we're trending in the right direction and we'll be continuing on for many more years. Burlington has a program that started up here as well, an adaptive management program, so excited for that. And all the programs around the state continue to compare notes and learn from each other. Open to any questions? Yes.
How are you making money off the buffers? Are you harvesting seed or?
Yeah, so the farmer, if it's a harvestable type of vegetation, they can make the money, but the city is paying that. And basically, so we're not making money in that sense. The city is investing in it, and it's through this alternative method that really compels the city to invest in land-based projects as an alternative to upgrading the plant to the degree that would be needed to get down to water quality. So it's kind of like an infrastructure investment. Yeah.
I appreciate your presentation. I like the way you're doing things, very creative. When it comes to conservation, there's three things that come up. First, convincing the landowner to do it. Second, who's paying for it.
Mm-hmm.
Third one is who's going to do it. NRCS, the Nature Conservancy, tell you that the landowner, it takes a lot of hand-holding to move along. One visit is not going to happen.
Right on.
Sometimes it takes 4 or 5 visits to that farmer to kind of work through and have one-on-one communications. So I appreciate what you have. I live in McHenry County, south of here. We unfortunately don't have that capability.
Yeah, yeah, and then we have a benefit of basically a legal mandate that we need to do this as a city, which then compels us to create that level of investment. And we have some important lead farmers, early adopters, and there are some people that are probably never going to do cover crops. So that was alluded to, and that's the name of the game too. One more, and then we'll.
How effective was your aerial seeding program?
Good question. So it really is varied based on, well, helicopter can do a lot of acreage quickly, so that's really important. It can have some variability. You've got a hopper swinging and you've got wind drift and things like that. The drone has been more efficient, but we also getting it on early. This past fall, we had an issue of real wet ground, major storm event in September, mid-September. I think we had slug, earthworm, or other pathogen affecting the seed growth, the young germinating seedlings. So we were almost too early and we got a lot of loss from that. You might have some fields looking just phenomenal, like the planting green field did, and then others like some bare patches. Drilling, you wait several weeks and you might have better.
Yeah. Be like 10 people on. I swear.